Joe Cochran joins the Cool Grandpa podcast to talk about his experience with helping his grandson and his family deal with a diagnosis of childhood leukemia. Now, we're going to dive into some more details, certainly, and you're going to listen to how Joe really helped to lead his family through this experience. So stay tuned for this important conversation. Hello, and welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is your host, Greg Payne, coming at you from Studio 12. This podcast is about being the best possible grandpa you can be, focusing on what it is to be a grandpa and how we can all share that experience together for our grandchildren. A couple of things that I want to remind you about is I've got this great 4-part course called Intentional Grandfathering. Now, this course is really suited for any grandfather, no matter if they're brand new or if they're a seasoned vet. This course, though, is going to be on sale through the month of June, and we're going to run the course in July so that we have a chance to have 4 different Q&A sessions throughout the month of July for any of the new granddads that are out there that want to connect and want to just ask questions or talk about their experience with being a grandfather. Now, the link for signing up for this course or finding out more information can be found in the show notes for this episode as well as over on my affiliates tab. So you can go to cool-grandpa.us, look for the show notes for this episode as well as the affiliates, click on those, and you'll also get a discount for the course by going through those 2 links. The other thing I want to remind you about is that my children's book, My Grandpa's Grandpa, is on sale now at 20% off through Father's Day. So if you haven't ordered a copy, now's a great time to order and save a little bit of money. As soon as you place that order, we'll drop it in the mail and get it out to you, lickety-split. Without further ado, let's jump into our conversation. Joe, welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I'm excited to have you on as a guest and talk about this really kind of an interesting and important topic, which is helping our families and our grandchildren through adversity. So I appreciate this time that you're spending with us.
Well, I'm excited about it too. I appreciate the opportunity.
As we get started, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself? Where are you living? What's your circumstances? Give us a little bit of background so we can get to know you a little bit.
I was born and raised in Portland. I grew up going to Ascension Grade School, Central Catholic High School, Portland State University, then OHSU Dental School. And then from there, I went on to the military, 6 years, active duty, and then I was a reservist for 4 years. In the military, I left the military, did an internship and residency in pediatric dentistry at Ohio State University, the Ohio State University and Columbus Children's Hospital, and I was very fortunate to meet my wife back in Ohio. I met her at a Byzantine Catholic Church, St. John Chrysostom Catholic Church. And ever since then, my life has been so much happier since I met my wife. We came back to Oregon. We got married in Oregon, actually, and then we moved down. We were already living in Ashland, Oregon, and that's 300 miles south of Portland, where I was from. And I had a pediatric dental practice down there for 37 years. I spent 35 years at a satellite practice down on the coast in Brookings. So I got to do a lot of surfing and ocean swimming, which I love. I coached soccer down there, played soccer. It was a lot of fun. Sponsored Mexican teams in the Mexican Soccer League, played on the teams and coached them. And I also coached children. And I was a referee as well. So I enjoyed that. When I was in the Air Force, I played Air Force soccer. I was a bus driver, referee, coach, player in soccer in Japan. And then in Wyoming, I was the coach for 4 years on a soccer team that was played up to what's called the competitive division, which is just below semi-pro. So I had a lot of fun doing that. But when I met my wife, we got married, we moved out to Ashland. We were blessed with 3 beautiful daughters. It was an incredible experience having children. I can't even tell you, it's transforming. They tell you that a man gets civilized when he gets married, but he learns to love when he has children. And it's really true. It is very, very true. And we were blessed with 3 young ladies that they had their mother to give them all the graces in life. And they were homeschooled for the first 8 years of their life, through the first 8 grades. Well, 2 of them were. And one went to, in 7th grade, went to Sacred Heart School. And when they transferred into public schools, they were told that they would be behind and they would be socially inadequate. But the oldest became vice president of the student body, and 2 of them were co-captains on the cheerleaders team, and they excelled in academics, went on to University of Portland. All 3 graduated with honors on the academic list, dean's list, and they did well. And one of them went on to get a master's in teaching, another went on to get speech and language pathology, and then a fellowship after that. So the middle one, she had a degree in social work and in Spanish. She wanted to help people who were deprived and in need of help earlier than even first grade, because she thought about being a first grade teacher. But she's the first one that got married, and she has 4 kids now. And so we're blessed with those grandkids. And the youngest one has 3 kids now. The oldest daughter, she has 1 on the way. So we're really excited. That's where we're at. And in 2020, I sold my practice, worked part-time in it. Then COVID hit. And then when COVID would let us go back to work, I worked part-time again. And then I decided to retire, and I came to Portland. And so we lived in Tigard for a while. Barb was back helping her father, who was older, and he needed help back there, and he helped her sister. Her sister was back there and her family. And so she was back there for a while. I was living in Tigard in a little 300 square foot house, which I'm sitting in right now for quite a while. And then we moved later on to Beaverton, got a beautiful house there. And right now we are within 10 minutes of all of our daughters.
Oh, wow.
And our grandkids. And so the other thing that's really an amazing gift in this life is that our 3 daughters married 3 of the finest men I ever met in my life. 3 of the finest men. They love and cherish their wives. They love and cherish their children. You know, I feel like I'm living a little piece of heaven here on earth.
That's fantastic. I love the background, and thank you so much for sharing with us. And I don't know if Steve told you, but I was born in Portland in Sunnyside Hospital, and I went through to PSU and got my bachelor's degree there. My father graduated from PSU, so we're really familiar with that whole Portland area. And I've got family that's out in Depot Bay, and I know we're talking a lot of Portland and Oregon geography here, but it's really beautiful country for those that have visited and those that live there. It's really fantastic and beautiful area.
Absolutely. Depot Bay is incredible. Done some fishing there.
Now, one thing that I really enjoyed asking grandfathers is the first time that you had the news broken to you that you were going to become a grandfather. Can you take us back to that event and everything that was going on with you and the memories around that first event?
Well, I think I cried. It was very exciting. We found out, we didn't know it was a boy or girl at the time, but it was, what happens for me is that I was thinking about my daughter, and she's pregnant, and I was thinking about my wife. It brought back all the memories of my wife having the babies and what she went through, labor and all that. And so what you start to do is start to pray real hard for your daughter, and you want to be there. You want to be there to help in any way you can and support. And so we tried to do that the best we could. We were living down in Ashland at the time, and so I was traveling up here as often as we could on the weekends. But I worked every other weekend at the coast, so we had to space it out.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, because everybody has a different reaction to that. Joyful is definitely an underlying theme to hearing that wonderful news, but everybody has things where it's like, I'm way too young for this, and oh geez, we're going to have to help the kids move to a bigger house, whatever it is that comes up. And so I appreciate you sharing that reaction with us.
Well, it was extremely exciting. I just felt so blessed. So blessed. my dream in my life was to be able to dance with all three of my daughters at their weddings. And I was able to do that. And then now I work really hard to stay in shape. I usually get up every single morning and pray. And I work out for an hour. I sauna, cold shower, go to church. I've been going to church every day since Theo got cancer. So praying for him. But it's actually been a blessing for me.
Well, I appreciate you talking about that. And that's a great way for us to segment and pivot over to talking about Theo. Can you take us back to when the news came with the family and about Theo's diagnosis, and talk to us a little bit about his leukemia?
Well, Theo, I'm a board-certified pediatric dentist, and I've worked with a lot of patients with leukemia. And so I understand the signs and symptoms. So I actually told my daughter that, listening to what she was telling me, when we would come up and see Theo and the way he was and how tired he was, no energy, his color was off. I said, all of his symptoms, he had bleeding in his mouth a little bit. And I said, you know what? I think he has leukemia. And I told her that. And so, she got it. When you're a parent, you're thinking the child, maybe he'd had the flu or something and had been down. And so he was maybe recovering from that, wasn't getting his energy back or whatever. But she got it checked out. Turned out he did have leukemia. So it's one thing to say he may have it. It's another thing to find out he really does. So then what goes through your mind is all the different types of leukemia a person can have. And then you think about what is his type of leukemia, what stage it's at, and what is his body's response going to be to treatment. And so that was a lot of things go through your head. Sometimes when you know a lot, it's scary because your imagination can take off and run. But what it did is it brought the whole family to their knees.
That's a great introduction. And I think, too, that's something that's, I don't know, everybody's going to react to it differently, but I think there's power in the family rallying around and then
Totally.
rallying around faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
And finding that, because I think sometimes these diagnoses, it can splinter a family. And there's a couple of different ways I think families can react to that. It's looking outwards with the anger and splintering apart. And then there's the other type where the reaction might be to focus in and draw tighter to each other and draw closer into faith. And so it's great hearing how your family reacted to that.
Well, our reaction was that we look at the big picture. We know that there's a tremendous amount of stress on Anna and Stephen, okay? Then there's other kids in the family. And so our thought process was we have to be there for all of them. The parents are devastated. And, they get the news and it's like a gut punch. And they're just sitting there going, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? And so, it's they do that, and then they're focusing a lot of their energy and attention on Theo because they've got to find out where he's at. They've got to get his treatment set up. They've got to get ready to go ahead and find out good, bad, and different, whatever the news is. And so our attention was also on the other kids to make sure that they were loved and time was taken with them and they were praised and built up so that they didn't feel like, they weren't given as much attention as they needed to. Because sometimes when you have an emergency like that in your family, you're focusing primarily on that. And so the family pulled together and wanted to be there for all of them, including Anna and Stephen, in every way we could.
A question that I've got for you, I want to step back just a little bit, is with your experience with a pediatric dentistry and having that kind of an academic mindset with some of the medical, how did you balance that out with the emotional part of it? Or did it help, one way or another, versus if you were to think about, if you're like me, an IT project manager that doesn't have that background, is there a different type of reaction that you had that maybe some of the other folks wouldn't have?
Well, I would say that I've seen the worst cases and the best. And so sometimes knowing about all the possibilities can be a little scary. So that, from that standpoint, that's where humility comes in. And you realize that God is the creator and you're the created, and that you have to put trust in God and put trust in those professionals who are going to be looking at Theo and helping to take care of him. And you pray as if everything depended upon God and work as if everything depended upon you. That's how you do it. But I can honestly tell you, I had a flashback in my mind of many of the cases I saw when I was in my internship and residency. And that was scary. Because some of them weren't all, back in my day, not as many people did as well.
There's been a lot of advancements for sure in
Absolutely.
in leukemia treatments, and especially with kids and how that gets treated. Now, you talked about the focusing in on the other kids. So it sounds a little bit like one of the things that you were able to do was to come in and spend a lot of time with the other grandchildren while mom and dad are spending time with Theo, probably going to treatments, going up to the hospital, visiting all the time, all of that work. And then you being able to be there for the other kids to keep things as normal as you could, let's say.
Well, you've got a situation where mom and dad went to the hospital with Theo, and when the early treatment, the first 6 months, they were pretty intense, and they were at the hospital with him. So we were helping take care of the kids. And so that was a good thing for us and the kids. We were able to go on hikes with them and cook their meals and help them out, and do things with them so that they felt very special too. And then when Theo would come home, we'd get all excited, so we wanted to make sure that we were positive and uplifting as best we could.
I imagine too that also maybe within that framework, were you able to still carve out special grandpa time with the kids and find activities that were special? And what I mean by that is that when sometimes grandparents are living away from grandkids and they show up for that week or that weekend, right? It's all fun and games. There's special activities that go on. But I think it sounds like within your case, being heads down, helping take care of them, did you feel like maybe you've lost a little bit of that specialness, or is it just different given the circumstances?
Well, we were living up here. So I think it deepened our relationship. And I think the kids feel a real excitement when they see their grandma, their grandpa, and their Mimi coming over. They go, Mama, Mimi, Grandpa. They get all excited, even now. And so, each one of us has different gifts and different talents. And so that's a beautiful thing because I'm more outdoors. I like to take them on hikes and scootering and, Theo on bike rides. We did a lot of biking before he had leukemia. And so we have a close relationship with them. Not only them, but our other 2 grandkids from Emily, and she's got a brand new daughter, Genevieve, Mary. And so we would be spending time with both of them, and sometimes we bring them together. But we felt it was like a blessing that we were here when it happened because we could step into that period of time when they really needed to be with Theo, giving him 100% of their time at the hospital and supporting him in every way. Because if you're a child, if you try to step into his shoes and you think you go into a world that is totally different and you hear that you have something that's pretty serious and you don't know what your future is at first, it's pretty scary. Even though you have the best professionals there are out there, the child thinks they know a lot more than people realize. And they hear what they're here and they think about it. So when you are able to learn what they're supposed to hear, reinforce that and encourage them and be there for them, and then compliment them on their courage. And even when they're afraid to go, compliment them because I would be afraid to go too. That's just the way it is. It's not all fun. So it's just, you sort of like tap in and try to be, I have learned to listen more. I have learned to, Theo was on steroids, put on a lot of weight. And it also made his personality more intense and his patience less elastic. And so you had to learn how to deal with that, and you worked with it. And in the process, you grew and he grew. And he got through that stage. And now he still has steroids every so often. He has to take them for a week at a time in between when he goes back in for intense treatments 1 week, and then steroids for a week, and then another intense period, and then he's off for a while. But the thing is, you learn how sometimes Theo will say, Grandpa, I'm on steroids. And so you immediately know where he's at. So it's like, okay, we understand. But you learn how to listen. And I think being a pediatric dentist and the training I had for that, and then the years I had working with kids, many of them compromised health and mentally compromised, you learn to appreciate that 70% of communication, believe it or not, is nonverbal. Your body language, the way you respond. I worked on handicapped adults too, and I had a very good rapport with them. The thing is, it's the same with children. When they see your body language, they can tell a lot from that, whether you love them or not, whether you want to be with them or not. And that is, you have to be conscious of that. Not just your words. Words can be empty. You can smile with your mouth, but not with your eyes. So,
what you were talking about brought back a lot of memories for me. I didn't have leukemia at all. I had a club foot, but I remember being 5 years old in the hospital. I was in Louisville, Kentucky at that time. My mom and dad didn't have any family around, and I had to go in for surgery days before surgery at that point, and my mom was bouncing back and forth between the house. And even this past weekend when I was talking to her, she still felt so guilty about not being home for my other brothers and then not spending enough time with me. And one of our humorous stories was the hospital was trying to do a good thing and gave me a little bit of a tour down in the surgery, but it also went by the big industrial washers and dryers and things. And as a 5-year-old kid, it freaked me out. And one of our humor stories is I ended up, quote, running away in the hospital. Now, what I think I did was I got out of my room, ran down to a little cubby where they had the payphones, and just hid because the machines and everything were just scary to me. So I can imagine Theo and other children in some of these pediatric units where you have IVs and you have all these different machines and protocols, everything else going on, just absolutely freaking these kids out. Eventually they kind of get used to it, but you're never going to forget some of those early memories that you have going through some of those experiences. And so, it's great that mom and dad could really focus and be there as much as they could with Theo in that hospital. And that it gave you guys the chance to bond with the kids, because sometimes with these adversities, I think it offers an opportunity for us to deepen those relationships. And
I agree.
You get to know, how do they like having their peanut butter sandwiches cut? How do they like all these little things that the parents know, but grandparents sometimes don't know.
Yeah, you learn they don't like crust.
Now, one thing I did forget to ask you is what are the ages of the grandkids at this point?
Marion, his younger sister, is 4 and probably 10, 12s. And you go to Vincent, he's 3.5. And then you go to Dom, he's 1.5. So it's Vincent and Dominic. I call him Vin, Dom. And so, it's an amazing thing. One thing you see that when you have more than one child is the next child coming up will try to imitate everything the older child does. And they're on a faster path. And it's beautiful because I see the children helping each other. I see them working with each other and having patience with each other. And, that's a beautiful thing.
It is. And being able to be there to kind of guide them through that process as well is absolutely rewarding.
Totally. I totally agree with you.
One thing I'd like to hear is what's the prognosis and where are things at with Theo?
Theo has been blessed in that he has the best prognosis that there is. His response has been very good. His dosages that he has to take are the least that you have to take because these drugs are very toxic. Like one of the reasons he has to be in the hospital when he was going through the first 6 months and then when he goes in every couple of months now is that he has to be in the hospital until he gets the chemicals out of his system. Because if they stay in his bladder or they stay in his kidneys, they can cause damage. So they have to be IV. They have to run fluids through them to get them out because they do their job, but you don't want them sitting around. So he is very blessed. He's had a very good response. There's been a number of times where he didn't meet the counts, maybe 2 or 3 times, so it put his schedule further forward. But the thing is, overall, he's done really well, and it's been incredibly a blessing. He's responded really well so far. But they always tell you, okay? They tell you, this is what he's done so far. We'll have to see what happens. So, because everything can change in a moment. So that's where we're at. We're just very grateful for where he's been, what he's gone through, how he's done so well, and we just cautiously pray that it continues.
Oh, absolutely. And I know, too, that there's a website that he has that's set up to talk about his care and has a photo gallery. And then there's also a GoFundMe page as well for
I think that folks. You go to you help Theo Kerber's beat leukemia. That's what you type in. You can get to that one.
Okay. And yeah. I'll be putting those links in the show notes so people can check it out and see the progress. And then also with the GoFundMe as well, if anybody wants to contribute and help the family out.
Well, that's awesome. So how are you doing with your foot that you had that surgery on?
I'm doing okay. I'm actually ended up much better than my father. So clubfoot is hereditary. Typically runs in the firstborn, I think, male. And so I had my first surgery at 6 months. And of course, as a newborn baby coming out with your foot all deformed and everything else, immediately my mom went to, I broke him, and these things that are, new mom stuff. But it immediately went into casts and braces. Had surgery at 6 months, surgery at 1.5 years, and then surgery at 5, and then was in braces until I was about 10. So the foot's pretty good. Did marching band, football, soccer, all those sorts of things, and only about a half a size smaller. So for folks that have club feet, a half a size isn't bad at all as far as a foot differential.
That's awesome.
Well, and what's been great is being able to work and talk with other kids that I've come across that have had club feet and talk with their moms about, hey, you can be a fully functional adult doing marching band and doing all these things, because I know a lot of moms, young moms with kids with this particular, it's not a disease, it's a condition. Sometimes they wonder about, are they going to be able to play football if they want to play football? Are they going to be able to do rock climbing if they want to do rock climbing? And so I'm able to talk to a few people and go, yeah, they can do pretty much whatever they want to now. The surgeries are in the rehab is so good now, not as big of a deal as it was, growing up.
Well, that's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
It gives you a lot of compassion, understanding, and empathy for other people.
Absolutely. And without that experience, just like we were talking about, I still remember 5 years old, 40 something years ago, being a freaked out little kid in a hospital by himself with a mom that's feeling guilty about not spending enough time at the hospital and not spending enough time with the kids. So definitely is something I can appreciate and understand. Now, one thing I'd love to talk about is how you're balancing out your activities now with living 10 minutes away from all the kids and grandkids. Is how do you balance out all that time?
Well, I was in the military. I traveled around the world. I was stationed in Japan, saw a lot of Asia, but later on we had trips to Europe. My girls were all violinists, and my wife in Junior Symphony was selling 77 tickets, I think, or 80 tickets, I think it was. and she didn't sell the last 7, so she bought them, and then we went on a trip to Europe. We took all the kids there. And then later on, our daughter, Anna, who is Theo's mom, was a nanny in Rome to a beautiful family there, and we went over and visited him there. And we got to see my sister, who was up north. And so I don't need to travel, and it's out of my system. My greatest joy is spending time with my family. So we, aren't there all the time, but I look at it this way. When you're looking at your life and you're at the further end of your life, every day is a gift. And so if you can spend it with the people you love, that is so special. And I have no problem. They call up, they need help, they want to do something. I jump at it. My wife jumps at it. She's the heart of the family. I'm sort of like the person that likes to climb fences and trees and go on hikes. And I still surf. Well, I did surf before COVID. I haven't surfed since then. But, I don't know. I just feel very blessed to be here. And I don't have to go to work. So I worked till I was 70. And I started working when I was 6, picking strawberries, raspberries, and beans. You grew up in Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Out in Gresham, that's where the strawberries were. And you come out this side, the west side, that's where the beans were. And so, I used to work for 10 years till I broke my back in football. I worked in the fields. So I feel, very blessed to be able to have some free time with my family. It's a dream. It's a dream come true, to be honest with you. It's really a dream.
That's awesome. Joe, what kind of advice would you have for grandfathers that may be learning about a situation similar to Theo's, but it may not be as dramatic as that, but it may just be a family emergency, an illness, something that's coming up that might be able to help inspire grandfathers to keep moving forward?
What I would tell you first is just say a prayer to the Holy Spirit. Ask the Holy Spirit to enlighten you to say what is right and what is not. And then also to be able to participate with the parents. Most important is ask the parents what you can do to help. And they may not immediately say they need your help or whatever, but let them know you're there. And when they know that they have somebody that has their back and is, there for them, I think it's huge. So I would say if you are able as a grandparent to be there for those kids and for your kids and for your grandkids, you get back double what you ever give. That's all I can say. The reward is amazing. And you ask yourself, my dad used to tell me something. He said, live each day as if it were your last. Tell the people you love that you love them. Do your best that you can. Be the best version of yourself in little ways every day. So you try to do that for your grandkids because, believe it or not, you're planting seeds for the future. And one of the things that my dad did for me that was incredibly wonderful, he was a very bright person. In many lessons in my life, he would tell me to do things or not do things, but he never did that without explaining why. And so when he passed on, or when I left and went to school and then to the military, I had in my head reasons to back up why I lived a certain way, why I had certain standards, why I treated people respectfully. And that's a treasure you pass on to the next generation. So if you're a grandparent and you have an opportunity to be with your children, use it. And there are tragedies that happens to all of us. There are sad things that happen to all of us. None of us go through life without that. But it's what we do when they happen that can make all the difference in the world to the people it's happening to.
Oh, that's great wisdom. Joe, is there anything about being a grandfather or our conversation around Theo that I didn't ask you that you'd like to touch on?
Well, what I do with Theo is I'm a talker. And you probably figured that out. I do that in my business. I do that in my profession. But what I've tried to do with Theo is I've tried to listen more and respond to his needs and to my other grandkids. Listen to them. And when I say something, I try to make it worthwhile. And I try to follow my dad's footsteps and try to give them a reason for why I do it. Why they should treat other kids certain ways with respect. And how they should treat their parents and how they should treat their cousins and how they should treat their aunts and uncles. And it all pays off, and it's a lesson in life that you try to live what you preach. And I try to do that. I really do, because actions speak louder than words. And I hope and pray that, with all the, everything in life, there's so many different whys in life where you can go one way or another. And you hope that you've contributed in a way that helps them choose the right way, the way that brings them happiness in this life and the next.
That's great advice and a great thing for me to aspire to try to do and remember with my young grandkids, as well as to remember to listen probably more than I talk, and to connect that way. Joe, thank you so much for being on the Cool Grandpa podcast. I sure do appreciate you taking time out of your evening to sit down and talk with us and share your experience with being a grandfather.
Well, thank you, Greg, for even having me on.
I really do appreciate Joe coming on and talking to us about his experience with helping his grandson through leukemia, as well as his experience with just in general helping the family out. How his relationship with his daughters, with his son-in-laws, and with all the grandchildren have really built a strong family unit. And you only get that through being an intentional grandfather. And I loved hearing that from him. The other thing that was a real strong takeaway for me was just the knowledge of needing to educate ourselves when we have these challenges and we have these diagnoses that come up in the family. Sometimes we can feel like we're just spinning our wheels and we're just running around and trying to figure things out. And we are, for sure. But being able to educate yourself a little bit more on the type of illness that a grandchild might be facing, possible outcomes, the more knowledge that you have on these things, the better that we are as grandfathers to help manage expectations, to help educate ourselves, and to really be there and be a support system for our sons and daughters as they're going through this experience with their children. I hope you liked this conversation, and if you did, I'd really appreciate it if you'd share it with 3 of your friends. That's the best way we can help spread the news about how important this role of grandfather is to the family. So, until next time, remember to stay cool. Thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend. That's the best way you can help us to expand our community, as well as get the news out about how valuable grandpas are in the lives of those kids. If you'd like to leave me a comment or shoot me a potential topic for this podcast, please go to www.cool-grandpa.us. Look for the comments tab, fill it out, hit submit. It's as easy as that. Until next time, remember to stay cool.